So how are we going to get there? Well, first of all, let's start with setting your blocks. This research has been done in 2019. Someone looked at all the different ways that you can set up your blocks, and they found, scientifically proven, and I agree with it, how to measure. You're going to measure from your hip bone to your ankle bone. Half of that length, that whatever you measure, is going to be where your front block goes, and about 45% of that length is going to be where your second block goes. It's not a two-step, three-step thing, you'll find out. And what you'll find out is when you get this right spacing, just by changing how those blocks are set up, they're going to have a better start. There's all kinds of scientific indicators that show just how much better your block clearance is and how much more velocity you create by setting them up at this length. Also incredibly important, 60% of your, anywhere from 40 to 50% of your power is going to come from that back leg. That back leg pushing horizontally is what actually moves you forward and rolls you up over the hinge to push from on that front block. If you don't push from that rear block, you're not going anywhere. You have to step out instead of exploding out. So you can do every drill in the world, but until you push off that back leg, it's not going to matter. You're never going to have a good start. You'll never make 3 meters a second. 60 degrees of the block pedals has been proven to be the best. Too vertical, and it's, even though kids like to go vertical, it actually decreases your plantar flexion and you actually get less power out. And when you go to press on the pedals, all the weight is going to be on the ball of your big toe. So once in that block position, this is the Ryo-Naga-Harga exercise. I couldn't find a good video of it or take a good video of it because it looked not good, not appropriate. But basically what you're going to do is when your athlete goes up in the blocks into the set position, you are going to grab them by their hip bones from behind, and they're going to push into the blocks to push through your hands as hard as possible, and then you're going to let them go. And that's how they're going to learn to push hard off both legs. It works really well. This is one of my key exercises. It's just I couldn't find a video where someone was going to say something. It just didn't look right. Like I said before, you need to be at 3 meters a second by block clearance, or you mathematically can't break 11 flat. So that first step, that first extension, getting your hips forward as quickly as possible is key. Without that, again, your ceiling's going to be low and your body angles are going to be off. Even more research on accelerated running. Usain Bolt's at 31 watts per kilogram within the first second with a velocity of 5.5 meters a second, where our high school guys, are at about 4 meters a second. So it becomes a question of how fast can you go by 1 second? If you double that speed, what your velocity at 1 second is, that should be your max velocity. Again, mathematically, it matches up all the time with incredible reliability. So if you have a short track or you're stuck, you can't go outside, think of ways that you can figure out how to get to how fast you can be at 1 second. Set up your timers, whatever. Because without getting there, it's just not going to happen. You're limited. It's a lower ceiling. Good paper came out in 2019. Acceleration speed, 50% of the power is used to accelerate your body forward, and 41% is to accelerate your limbs. So once again, we're looking at limb speed from the equation from the previous presentation. And 9% of your power goes to raise your center of mass. So some ideas that you can do with this that I have found work really well is over speed starts. You don't have to have a 1080. You can string up a rubber band. You can give someone a shove. You can give them a stumble where they've got to get their feet down and catch their balance and go. Greater rear block force was the number one thing that they found to be the difference between elite athletes. And the idea is you try to get a longer push off that back leg. Keep the back leg on as long as you can to move your hips forward. So if you look at someone elite, there's a lot of horizontal force there. You can see he rolls forward. We're going to do one more here so you can see his back leg push. And so When his knees are even, he still has his back leg on the block, which is key. And we'll get to that more later. In one study in 2015, 70% of it was plantar flexion to get out. And switching happens with faster athletes. So again, the limb speed of when you take off is going to be about the same as when you sprint. A lot of kids, though, they start out slow and they try to stand up and accelerate. You try to get the limbs to shift as quickly as possible. So a good coaching cue, as I said before, your hips should be over the knees before your back foot comes off the block. So whether you're Christian Coleman on the left or Rob Scott on the right, it's going to be the same. That means you've gotten a good push off your back leg. If you do not have that timing, you are off and you are missing out on what that back leg can offer. Here is probably one of my best training tools in teaching how to start out of the blocks. Most people, especially girl athletes, don't have the strength to come out of the blocks immediately. We go tell them to go practice blocks. They go over, they don't know what they're doing. If you can block up their arms, they can learn to rock over and push and get a good horizontal push. Gradually over time, we're going to decrease the height of the blocks, so it's like they're coming eventually to the point where their hands are down on the ground. Again, between this and the Nagahara exercise, there's a whole lot there that you can work with to really improve what we're trying to do here. So when we look here, we're going to see just how hard they're pushing out of the block. You can see the musculature of the plantar flexion when they come out. There's all kinds of intrinsic foot strength going on when you push out. So here again, something key to how well we're going to get out. When we start, your front thigh rotates forward and constitutes 55% of the power. The front shank rotating forward is rotating forward 70% of the time. And what do? We stand straight up and we never think about moving our knee to the ground. And I think that's huge. A huge training tip that I have found is tell them to push their knee toward the ground just for a moment, because that's what's going to create everything to rotate forward. Too many times when we don't have that rotation, you're going to stand straight up in the blocks. You're going to come out at about 50 to 60 degrees instead of coming out at 30 degrees. Again, if we think about that, watch him rotate everything forward when he comes down. Knee rotates forward, shin rotates forward when he comes out of the blocks. The push rotates everything down. So when you do not push off the back leg and you do not rotate forward, this is why people have a turtle back. This is why when they go to push the blocks, their spine bends. It sticks up in the air and they look like a turtle walking by. That back leg has to push you forward so you don't turtle back, and then you're going to tell them to reach their head toward the finish line. But if they push off that back leg and rotate that front thigh down, if you turtle back, you fall. So they know that, so they won't fall. Here's an example of a turtle back. It's not a great example, but it's what I found. You can see foot's off the block. His knees are even. Back is curved. He's done. Look at how much he has. Look at how much curvature in his spine when he's going. He's losing a ton of power through his spine. Again, I've seen much worse, but that's a good example. So when we hit first ground, first contact, this is when the ball of our foot becomes a hinge. It's an inverted pyramid. So you have to have momentum to push yourself over the hinge. Rolling over the front shank allows for the flow of energy to be transferred in a horizontal fashion. So again, you're going to hinge off the ball of your foot. If you can't keep your toes up, you can't hinge. or come off the inside of your foot. But that is what happens here, and that's going to be for your first 7 steps. Finally, when you get up and start sprinting, then you have a different hinge. But coming off, that's the part that's on the ground and rolls over. So without that acceleration coming out, there's nothing to move your mass forward.